Hello and welcome to Game Changing with me, Tim Thornton.
And me, Chris Sheldon.
In this podcast, we chat to various luminaries from the music world who we've met along the way.
About those key moments in their careers where the stars aligned and it all started to go right.
In this episode, Chris has a chat with, I think it's fair to say, one of the more unsung heroes of pop music, Dave Bascombe. Dave has some pretty damn impressive mixing credits to his name. Suede's smash hit third album Coming Up, James's signature song Sit Down, and Placebo's classic Nancy Boy, to name only three. But in the 1980s, Dave was a crucial part of three absolute bangers. He engineered Tears for Fears' globe-busting album Songs from the Big Chair, going on to engineer and co-produce the band's follow-up The Seeds of Love, as well as co-producing Depeche Mode's Music for the Masses. As you'll hear, Dave views his involvement in these records with typical modesty, as he tells Chris how he worked his way into the music industry and how he carved himself a reputation. We join the conversation as Chris and Dave discuss the development of what's now a producer's essential tool, the home studio.
It just occurred to me because it's all to do with in the box.
Yeah. Well, it all changed, didn't it? Suddenly, it was possible, and I was thinking that here we are sitting in your home studio, which is very similar to mine, which is very similar to Adrian Bushby's. Everybody, we've all got a similar kind of setup, and the first home studio that I ever worked at was working on a Roger Waters album, right? And he had a home studio, but his home studio also involved a Studer A80 and a big I mean, they were kind of they were like rock stars had home studios.
Well, I had exactly the same thing. I think the first. Well, I was working for Jethro Tull, so he had a studio. But anyway, I was used to the idea of going to rock stars' houses, and when you're a few years younger than these people, it was so exciting.
Yeah, oh my God, yeah.
And we had a mobile, so we took the mobile to Roger Glover's place from Deep Purple, did an album there. They were in the barn, we were in the truck.
So a quick rewind, was Maison Rouge had its own?
Yeah, it had a mobile, originally it was just a mobile.
Oh, because we got to talk about your early days here.
Yeah, because that was, when I started, it was when they just built the bricks and mortar building in Fulham. And I was the last one in.
Okay, so there's so much to talk about. This is great. But obviously you got your job then, and I assume it was through the tried and tested method of writing letters?
No, and of course, I'm going to say I've listened to all these programmes you've done so far, and they've just been brilliant. Because partly because, well, obviously you're esteemed yourself, but but mainly they're all of a certain age.
Yes.
And we all got the similar kind of backgrounds.
Yeah.
So it's so interesting. But I didn't actually write letters. I was in a band, and a few local bands that were going nowhere, but I was convinced.
So not signed, or anything?
No, long way off.
Right.
I was convinced I was going to be the next Rick Wakeman, even though punk was happening. Anyway, the bass player saw an advert in Melody Maker saying Junior wanted for a London studio, and I was an adult. I'd left school about a year before, and he wasn't interested. I went along. I have no idea how I got the job, because I think it's the second week the advert been in there. They'd obviously seen a few people. And also had no idea that they'd get hundreds of letters a week.
And Maison Rouge was just literally built, was it?
Yes. They say they had the mobile for a couple of years or so.
So when is this? When are we talking?
77 or 8, I can't remember now.
Okay, all right.
I've got the letter somewhere.
And am I right, am I right in thinking that it was owned by Jethro Tull?
Yeah, that's right.
Right,
yeah,
okay.
Yeah. So obviously they built the mobile, and that being successful, and then he decided to branch out. It was still an investment in those days to run a studio, so... and I was I think I've been taken on just before the opening, and my first jobs were like vacuuming actually carpet cleaning, just crap stuff, cleaning the boss's car, like most of us, I think. And, Tim was talking about being lippy on sessions, wasn't he?
No, yeah.
Oh, I love it. And Dave Bascombe.
Well, ditto.
Yeah. And my very first, because we had a little in-house production company that never really did anything. So my first session that I ever sat in on was my boss, Robin Black, who's Tull's main engineer, doing a production on something, and I was sitting on the back seat. I still remember what it was, and the guitar had done a solo, and the note was hanging on, and the chords were changing underneath it. And I went, if you just changed that note on when he said it, it just slid up a fret. And Robin looked at me like, Robin was a lovely bloke. He'd never tell you to fuck off, but basically the look said it all. Okay, it's probably my place. Because I was the only one there who'd actually I'd done demos with my band, so I had been in the studio before. So I was that smart arse who knew it all,
I mean, nowadays, if you're lucky enough to land a job in what's left of the London studio scene, everyone's been through, Full Sail or ACM or what have
Yes.
you. So,
Yeah.
none of us, of course, had, but I suppose having been in a band and been in a couple of studios.
Yeah. But it wasn't essential in those days. When I say the other guys, a lot of people didn't. But
So you've done bits of engineering. You were assistant. Did Robin sort of show you the ropes as far as actual
there's
mic placement? And all
Yeah,
that sort of
there's him
boring
and Tony Taverner. He was a fantastic engineer. It's a completely different way of doing things. Robin was really kind of, I mean, if he won't mind me saying it because he's pretty illogical. But I mean, those sounds are just incredible,
Yeah.
But so Tony showed me the sort of slightly more rigorous, let's say, way of doing things. But then they both come out the studio models, so they both knew what they were doing. At the time, we only had one studio originally, and it was very much the 70s dead sound. And as far as I hated everything we were doing there. I mean, we weren't at the cutting edge at all.
No.
And later on, in the early 80s, skipping forward, first of all, we built another studio, we put Studio 2 with an MCI in it. And then I'd been to the townhouse, and I think it was really me saying, we need a stone room. So we built a stone room at the back of Studio 1.
Studio
1 it was.
Well, Studio 2 at Townhouse, I mean.
Oh, yeah, sorry.
The back, wasn't it?
Yes,
Yeah.
I heard all the Peter Gabriel stuff, and what Hugh Padgham was doing, which, it was just so exciting. I just thought, this is what John should sound like. And so I had a few sort of little techniques that I'd use to sort of copy it, non-linear gated plate and stuff, Anyway, I sort of persuaded Robin that we should put a stone room in at Maison Rouge, which I think Duran used later on, So.
Weren't Power Station
Power
ones?
Station.
They were done there, weren't they?
They were, yeah, that's right.
Everyone thought it was in New York Power Station, but actually they were done at the end of Fulham Road. But I remember I did a couple of sessions down at Maison Rouge. I think engineering, I was producing something, I also engineered some stuff for Tim, I think.
Oh, right, okay.
Might be the House of
80s,
Love.
Though?
Yeah, about the 80s.
I was going to talk to you about the House of Love.
And it was great. I mean, unfortunately, Maison Rouge...
That would have been the SSL years, though, wouldn't it? That was...
So what was it when you started?
Helios. So it was really like a different era. I mean, when 1980 came along, it was like the whole world changed, the studio changed. It had a Studio 2, which is very Eastlake, but still it was not quite as brown as the original Studio 1, with the brown Helios. And we put the SSL in, of course, so that suddenly we jumped into that league, and then you got Wham, Culture Club, Duran, all these people coming in.
Well, it's incredible to think back now, but at the time, a desk would sell your studio.
Yeah.
You needed an SSL.
You had to have an SSL.
If you didn't, that was it.
Yeah.
You weren't getting any work. So when did you...
I think I left it, I think it was about 81, and Jerry Boyes, who was actually was engineering with Gus Dudgeon, he started working at a place called Livingston, and he offered me a job up there as an engineer, but it felt like years I was waiting at Maison Rouge for the break, because I'd been doing a few bits and pieces. I'd been off to Beck on the Bunnyman as a freelance engineer, and then I distinctly remember coming back from that and making the tea on Young Guns by Wham.
Back at Maison Rouge.
Back on Maison Rouge.
Right.
And I thought, this has got to change. I can't do this anymore. But I didn't want to go until I had something else lined up. And Jerry eventually offered me a job at Livingston. It's funny because I spoke to one of the producers I regularly worked with at Livingston last year, and he told me something which I never knew. I said, I've never why Jerry gave me a job. He said, well, he said you had a vision. I thought, wow, that's interesting. I don't remember that.
You had a vision?
I had a vision.
Wow, check you out.
I know. It's flattering. Take me 30 years to find that out.
I wish I could remember what it
Can you
was.
remind me?
Yeah, Maison Rouge was a great studio. So you would have been working down there from sort of 77 to kind of 81?
Maybe 81, 82, something like that.
And then you were basically headhunted.
Wow.
Down to Livingston, with your vision.
Yeah.
Down to Livingston.
Yeah. It was a culture shock, really, because Maison Rouge at that time was just coming up, as I said. We were doing all the bright, shiny pop stuff, Wham, Culture Club, and Livingston was like doing a lot of folk. Well, it really was. It's like going back 10 years, and it was not cool. I mean, and so I stuck it out for I think a year or two, and I got some good contacts, but not enough. And then so eventually I went freelance. Just a bit more detail. What started happening was you get producer engineers coming in more and more into Maison Rouge, and I found out they seemed to like me because you'd be more than assisting, more than tape up in, but still not actually necessarily on the desk. Although I did a lot of work with a guy called David Henschel, who produced Genesis, and he was the first guy who actually I'd be sitting at the desk with mixing. I mean, he'd have it all marked out. But they were quite complex mixes, so you really need to know your chops. So you'd say, okay, for the bridge, this bit comes in, move to that mark, mute this.
So you'd be on this sort of helping him doing it at the same time.
I mean,
everybody.
I remember,
Desk,
but this was just me and him. which was great, you know. And I've been involved in these projects, so I knew where everything was. I had an intricate knowledge of it, but it's really enjoyable. And I was doing all the edits as well. So anyway, we got on really well. And then later on, there was a guy called George Nicholson, and he was doing, the Nolan Sisters, all this kind of stuff. And I think he recommended me to Max Hull, who was the head of A&R, for the Bunnyman gig.
Which Bunnyman record
it was
this?
Porcupine. And so anyway, I'd done a few bits and pieces for Max Hull, and including It's a Material, amongst other things. I suppose it was gathering ground a little bit. So anyway, having left Livingston, I was at home one day, and I got a call from Max Hull saying, "Are you around today?" And I said, "Yeah." I said, "Well, Tears for Fears are in the studio, and they need an engineer." So it's like, right place, right time.
So now this
the premise of your podcast, mate. That was it.
Well, okay. So this was the big moment for you. So you would have been what age? You'd have been like 22,
23 maybe.
Yeah,
I think 22, 23, something like that. I think I was probably 23 when I started Tears for Fears.
So you're sitting at home twiddling your thumbs.
Yeah.
And you get a call.
They had to go up to Trident, the Annex, Trident 2 in Victoria.
Right, I remember Trident 2.
Yeah. And my assistant, my T-boy was Alan Mulder.
That's where he started, wasn't it?
Yeah. But of course, I was incredibly daunted when I got there. I forgot everyone's name. So I remember walking in and going, and I'd forgotten Chris Hughes' name. I said, so
had you met Chris?
No, I hadn't met any of them. None at all. So I walked in completely, and they're quite a little bit intimidating. So I think it's intimidating to work with anybody in that situation. But they came across a little bit prickly, I mean, Roland was not an easy person to get to know, so it was a bit daunting. Chris was fine, but I think, Roland says it all the time, I was kind of just a bit of background on Tears for Fears. They'd done the first album with a guy called Ross Cullum Engineering, who's basically very much Chris's mate, and I think Roland had found it quite, a bit of a battle over the Axis, and there were a lot of, Tears for Fears were very tortuous, the process, everything was heavily discussed, every little point. And I think Roland didn't really want to repeat that. And I was the guy who was just really easy to get along with, So, but it was. I was interested in the things that Roland was into, which is the day-to-day sounds. We were both really into modern sounds, whereas Chris really wasn't that bothered about that side of it. So
when you say modern sounds, are you talking about the keyboard sounds and
drum sounds? Well, yeah, both really. But for example, in a track called Pale Shelter, it's got what I'd call a modern snare sound, a kind of gated thing, Now Chris never liked that. Chris was very into traditional kind of 70s dead sounds. And I remember Roland asked me as a kind of little test, do you like that snare? I said, that snare sounds fantastic on Pale Show. He sort of turned to Chris and went, there, so you go. So I was just kind of outlaying that sort of point scoring, Right. But, so I don't, as I said, I don't claim to have any influence on that album at all, really. There was like 3 very intelligent people with big egos there, and I'm not going to rock the boat. And I think that was my role, and that's fine. I'm happy with that,
But you were they were talking about songs from The Big Chair. You were integral to it, man, because of the way that I remember buying that album and just thinking, well, I know nothing.
Really?
And honestly,
well, again, what's changed?
Nothing.
Yeah.
I remember buying that record, and I think it kicks off with Mother's Talk.
It kicks off with Shout, but yeah.
Sorry.
I remember
the first track I played was
right.
Mother's Talk. I don't know why.
Yeah.
I think I'd heard it on the radio or something,
right, yeah.
and I put it on. And I was like, fucking hell, this is unbelievable.
Well, it is.
Obviously, they're fantastic songs.
Yeah.
But the way that they'd been presented and engineered and mixed, it was a real eye-opener for me. And it was just like, okay.
Well, that's what they were working on when I first started, and I remember exactly the same. I thought, this is just gobsmacking, but...
And it was Ian Stanley, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Well, I believe,
yeah. But he was the one who was sitting there with that old micro composer, I think it was an MC4.
MC4,
yeah. The one that Human League used to use. And he was just sitting there, heads down, typing this like a computer, Right. So we did Mother's Talk, mixed it in air, I think.
Was that the first track you did, Mother's Talk?
Yeah, absolutely. That's what they were working. That's the first track they got back. The first track we did on the album.
Right.
They'd done it with... They keep sacking Chris Hughes, it's a bit of an in-joke. They'd gone off and done it with Jeremy Green. But that didn't work out, needless to say, for one reason or another. I don't know why. And they got Chris back, and I don't know if it's Chris's first day back in the studio with them, and that's why there wasn't an engineer. I could only surmise that, but it felt like they'd done a bit of work on it already, so I just don't know. But I know there's 48 tracks. There's a lot of Jeremy Green stuff still there, some of which was replaced, some of which was kept.
So the track had already been started?
Oh, yeah, it's been started, and the bones of it had been done, and we didn't start all over again, certainly. So I don't know how much of Jeremy's stuff's on there or not. But
And were you given, obviously, once you'd proved yourself, were they quite sort of? I mean, I don't know Chris Hughes, I don't know the band or anything, but were they quite happy for you to sort of assume that role with the mixing, or were you?
Yeah, it was kind of back then, as you remember, it was like mixing wasn't the big deal. It was like
No,
you
it
finished
really
the recording and you mixed it, and that's so that was. Yeah, that's the way it worked. So yeah, I mean, once I was in, I think. You know, the thing was, I was going to say, but after we'd done that, I think actually we mixed it at Trident. We did a few various mixes, and then I was booked to do the album, and it all went quiet. I spent what felt like forever. I think a few months at home, and I'd ring Chris every now and again. I didn't want to hassle him. And he kept saying, yeah, okay. And I really thought they'd gone somewhere else.
Yeah.
But it turns out that for Tears for Fears fans, they'd know this, but Roland, Chris had said, like, we need some more songs. Giving Roland the famous couple of months off, and he'd gone away and come up with Shout, basically, and by the bones of what became Everybody Wants to Rule the World. So anyway, they'd worked. Shout was just a chorus. So Chris, Ian, and Roland had been in the studio developing the whole rest of it, which, you know, all the verses, all the middle bits, and it's obviously a pretty complex structure, so it took a long time. They were basically working the demo of that. And then when they finally got that to where they wanted it, then I got the call and we went down and started recording the rest of the album, including that.
And where were you doing that?
That was all at Ian's house. And that's another reason. In fact, I've been reading this interview that Roland did today about it. And it was the Hurting was expensive, pretty fraught, a lot of tension, inexpensive, you know, air studios or whatever. Cost a fortune, long days, because you had to in those days to make most of the hours. So this was Ian Stanley had what had started as a pretty basic home studio, and then they bought an Atari 24 track, a little Soundcraft desk, and enough gear to make a record. So we did. We did it all there, and it was great. You know, it was.
There's something really fun about making records in houses and stuff like that, isn't it?
Great.
It's
really
whole
atmosphere is utterly different. You know?
It's very relaxed.
Yeah, that's the whole point of it, isn't it? And you know, we'd have dinner. We'd sometimes have dinner there, all around the big table, or we'd go out to whatever. Go out to Mole's Club in the evening. It was.
Yeah, no, I remember that. But I was also something else that I was thinking about. That was sort of mid-ish 80s, wasn't it? Sort of 84.
I think it came out in 85.
Right.
Mother's Talk came out first, maybe the back end of 84.
Right. So
I was still with finishing the
so
album.
between 83 and 85 is when you were really making the record, and that was firmly analog days.
Yeah. Well, yeah, by necessity, because there wasn't any.
No. Well, there was nothing else.
Well, we'll digress here. We so hated the old world, analog, all this. It was just all boring crap. So the F1 had just come out. Do you remember the F1?
No.
Sony F1. This was a domestic digital recorder.
Yes,
for
I do
hi-fi.
remember.
It worked on Betamax tape.
Yes, I do remember it.
A videotape, and it was awful. But we just thought it's digital. It's got to be great. So the whole album was mixed on that, which is just now it's just
the actual
half-inch, the 2-track. Yeah,
I do remember that because they had one.
I think we ran half-inch as a safety. I really hope we did, because God knows what they were using to remaster things from now.
Sure.
But no, I remember we bloody mastered it off this F1 thing. Oh, what a nightmare! And in fact, the BBC banned anybody's record that had been made of one, because the top end was all out of phase.
Well, to find things as well, literally there was a little counter.
Yeah.
It was a domestic.
You imagine the chance of
VCR
wiping
machine.
over the end of the previous mix, you know.
Well, it struck me that you and the band, you see, were quite sort of early adopters of all the new tech that was going on.
I mean, I loved it. The first time I heard a Linn drum, I just thought, this is it. This is the future. Get rid of those boring drummers who are out of time and arseholes. This is ridiculous now. But it was very, very, very exciting. And we had pretty much the kind of cream of the crop of the state of the art. I mean, there wasn't a huge amount of stuff then, but we had a Prophet 5, we had an Emulator 2, it was an Emulator 1, Emulator 2 wasn't out, Prophet 2, Fairlight 2, the Linn drum obviously we used a lot, the Drum Emulator, which we used for bits and pieces, DX7, I think that was, and a PPG Wave, that was quite integral.
Well, that was a gnarly thing.
Yeah, it was. Gnarly is a good word for that.
Yeah.
Yeah, that went out on quite a few things.
Yeah. Because it struck me that part of your career was very much part of that cutting edge modern tech sounds and stuff. Would you say that's
absolutely? Yeah,
that's
I
right.
loved it. And of course we had reverb, for days.
For days. Yeah.
We kept all these hire companies afloat with more lexicons.
Renting lexicons. Yeah.
We were quite famous for that. But and that's what we were. Basically the reverbs were all pretty much all lexicon, bit of AMS.
Yeah. Now, also around that time, did you do some stuff with Peter Gabriel?
That was quite a lot later. Well, actually, it wasn't that much later on.
But that was pre Seeds of Love.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, it was, I don't know, maybe 86, 87. That didn't work out, really, to be honest. It was just...
this was down at his little place he had, didn't
in
he?
Ashicombe, yeah.
Yes.
Lovely. Well, say lovely, but it was...
Well, it was like a garage.
It was,
Because
but it was
I
a
remember
big barn.
coming down to see it.
Cows used to come and look in the windows, you know. But it was typical Peter. I mean, you know, obviously, lovely, incredibly talented man that he is. Totally nutty, you know. I mean, so he'd been talked into buying this tape machine, which is basically the mechanical bits of the Studio A80, but all the electronics were built by some boffin. Never worked properly. I mean, see, the difference between that and Tears of Fears was night and day, because Tears of Fears, they were the same age, it was fun. If I had to do an edit, they'd go off and play pool or something and let me get on with it. With everything had to be... No, you couldn't disturb the flow. It was absolutely crucial with Peter. You know? So we'd be doing a backing track and we'd be overdubbing a whole band on top of a 48-track session that was already chock-a-block. So the hi-hat would be on track 23 and the bass drum would be on 47. You know, and half the toms would be on 5, and the other one would be... It was logistically a nightmare. And then you get that all set up, and everything had to sync up afterwards, and you had to edit everything in time, even real drums, but still had to keep the Lin drum in time as well. It was impossible. Yeah, and keep the synth in time.
Right.
It was just logistically no kind of sense of what was, you know, just do it, you know, get on with it. And,
right.
Anyway, so I remember one thing we were doing drums with, I think probably Manu, Catche, and Peter would get an idea for something, and he just grabbed one of the tom-tom mics, got a bit of African percussion and started find a track for this. Okay, track 49, you know, bash it out, and you get a groove towards the end. I think, oh, that's great, you know, let's go and get it go back with that groove. No, just park it somewhere. So, okay, get another slave out, you know, do all this. I mean, you know what, logistically and technically, it was really hard and time consuming.
So just stuff all over the place.
Stuff all over the place. So this would get shunted off somewhere.
Right.
And then you try and reset the tom-tom mic to what it was without any recall, you know, while the musicians are waiting for you or everything. I know, I mean, Flood, these people, I mean, talk, that's kind of, he thrives on that kind of stuff. But I just felt they weren't on, it was like a battle, really. Yeah. Didn't get on with Daniel and Noir. I wasn't doing a great job, so we basically agreed to
disagree, and moved away.
Yeah.
But sometimes it just happens, doesn't it? That you find yourself in those situations, and I think everybody finds it at a certain point, and you just think, I'm not the guy for this.
No, absolutely. And Pete was a lovely load of money. He gave me a lovely credit. I mean, engineered by Dave Bascombe, and I don't know how much of it they kept. But I mean, I had done a few things on there, but you know, I was surprised when I saw that, and that's just a token of what a great bloke he is. Because, you know. I hadn't fallen out with him. I think he's just absolutely marvellous.
I think Kevin Killen, didn't he?
That's right. He
took over from you, I think.
And I've seen various interviews, and they had to completely reconstruct everything, go onto digital and Mitsubishi, and sort of rebuild the whole thing. Because I kept trying to tell you, I don't take blame for that, because I had tried to flag it all up, you know. But you can't edit Sympathy.
It was a very interesting time, I think. You know, because it was trying to squeeze the new technology into old school recording methods.
It was exciting because it was pushing
exciting
the boundaries.
And nightmarish.
Absolutely. But you know, with Tears of Fears, we were totally into the whole thing. So I was giving, you know, if I had to do something like that,
So no one was breathing down your neck.
Absolutely.
See, that's what a lovely thing.
But they also assumed I knew what I was doing. You know, so
but you did.
Well, I did. I think
But also, I think, you know, for a lot of these things, they'd never happened before.
No.
So we had to find ways of doing.
But I do think some people hadn't, you know, some of the old guys hadn't really kept up with this sort of stuff. I'm a bit like us now. It's hard to keep up. You know, this is the most boring podcast.
Well, no, I don't think it is, because I think that people are fascinated in how things were done and how it led on to stuff. Because then there was a sort of, like, you know, digital recording started to sort of sneak in.
Yeah, but I think what the point is, you're right. It was hugely exciting, not just because it was a new bit of kit to play with, a new toy. Well, but a lot of it was that, but it had a new sound, you know. So we were making new sounds.
Yeah.
When Trevor Horn was at the forefront of all that, and his records were just staggering, and I think I certainly aspired to all that. You know, just these soundscapes that would never been possible before.
Yeah.
You know, and everyone knows he'd go through torture to, you know, in the same way we did, but
just to get something new.
You know?
Yeah.
So it was a great time.
So in between those, there was a sort of 3 or 4 year gap between the Tears of Fears records.
Yeah.
And what sort of things were you up to then?
Well, I did a few things. First thing that I think this is, I did Depeche Mode, Music for the Masses.
And this was production?
That was co-production.
Okay.
And it was pretty much what I'd done with Seeds of Love, to be honest. It was, engineering, but and not really steering it in any great way. Not like Flood did, by any means. But it was Alan Wilder basically was in charge of that, and I was kind of putting my stamp on it in a subtle way, I guess. Just doing what I do. But I think before that, I've been, as a producer, I started doing a few productions, and I did a band called Danny Wilson.
I was going to ask you about this now, because that is just fantastic. We're talking about Mary's Prayer.
Mary's Prayer, yeah.
Which is an incredible song. And it still sounds fantastic.
Yeah.
I think, you hear it on the radio. I mean, I hear it probably once every 3 weeks.
Really?
Oh my God, man.
I didn't know it was on that much.
Oh my God. I seem to maybe it's because I just an old-timey radio.
Well, I mentioned that partly because it's one of the few productions I've done that actually, it was the first production I think I've done that was actually a hit. Which is, huge.
Yeah, bona fide hit.
Yeah. And but I was going to come to a more general point, which is all the other guys you've done, I think, producers so far. And I know you do a bit of production, same as me, but I say we're both pretty much mixers, more than producers.
Well, I think now, yeah.
Well, I've kind of drifted into that, and I'm happy to that, because I think Mary's Prayer, I definitely had a vision for it. I really did. I had quite a strong vision, and luckily for me, they'd done the whole album with another guy, spent quite a lot of money at Puck Studios, and the singles hadn't really worked out, particularly Mary's Prayer. So I got not carte blanche, but they got me back in, and well, not back in, but they got me in. So they kind of lost track a little bit, and so I had a strong vision. So I said, right, I think we should do this. Slow it down, blah blah, and it worked out, and I think everyone was very happy with it. So that was great, but I didn't have to really push against anybody with set ways, which I think. Anyway, my point I'm coming to really is that I'm not a producer, and I think the other guys you've talked to have got a very different job, and I've never really enjoyed it since, because I don't think unless you've got that vision, which I don't really have, I don't really follow everything that's going on as much as you need to have to points of reference, and I enjoy mixing. I've drifted into that luckily, but
well, okay, yeah, we'll get onto that, because I think there definitely seemed to be a point when. I certainly started to become more aware of you as a force to be reckoned with, as a mixer. But going back a bit before that, just one thing you touched on, and I didn't know this. You said that when you were mixing Songs from the Big Chair, you were in Munich, was it?
Yeah, we mixed it, bulk of it in Munich. They just wanted to change, like a lot of people did back then.
What was the studio there that you worked at?
What was it called? It was a weird place. I can't remember. Union Studios.
Right.
And I went out for a weekend, or a day trip, just to check it out. Which is, again, that was really exciting as a kid.
Yeah.
Ticket to Munich. It had an SSL, basically, that's what we wanted. But it really wasn't equipped for our sort of stuff at all. Okay. Because it was an umpire studio. But in the main studio, we were in the mix room, but in the main room, you just hear...
There's a lot of lederhosen going on.
Stuff going on, which is hilarious. But also, they ran out of patch cords and stuff like that all the time. And I remember, this is classic, rather. The studio manager's name, Hair Curler.
No.
Hair Curler. Koehler. Just wonderful. Anyway, but, we'd run out of patch cords, and this guy came in and said, "Lovely man," he said, "Well, I can get some from this other studio, but can you pay for the cab?" And we all went, "Yeah, whatever." And Ryan said, "No, it's your job. You run out of patch cords, so you bloody pay for the cab." This is typical Roland. So. Anyway, yeah, that was fun. Yeah, so we went to Europe, but then we came back and we hadn't. Obviously, I do remember things there. We did the vocal for Everybody to Rule the World there because that was the last track we worked on. We did a little synth that's in the second verse, and I think we hired a prophet for that, but we didn't have any sequences. So that's pretty much the only thing on the record that does anything like that. That's hand played.
Actually played.
Yeah. It still sounds like it to me. I can still tell almost.
Really, yeah.
Obviously.
Yeah. But, do you still have that thing where even now? I mean, how many? 25 years later or whatever.
35, mate. 35 last week it came out.
35, yeah. I mean, I still listen to some records that I've done in the past. Some of them, it's almost like listening to, I don't even remember being involved with it. Yes, somebody else's record. Yeah. And there's other ones that I listen to and I think, God, and I can still hear the errors.
Absolutely. I can remember moves I did on the mix,
Yeah.
Some of those Genesis albums, I can remember putting some reverb on the bass from one line. Every time I hear the record now, it's ridiculous. That's anal I got. But it was, I was young, hugely important part of my life, and so I remembered so much detail about it. But inevitably, everyone else remembers different things.
So, do you think that you were doing, obviously, you did the Danny Wilson thing that you did, obviously the Tears for Fears things were these sort of two enormous projects in your life. I mean, and there's sort of before and after Tears for Fears in a lot of weird sort of ways. But I mean, in between times, did you get in more into production? It was Danny Wilson thing.
Well, I did that, and I did quite a few bits of production. I did some stuff with It's a Material, hit with Drying Away from Home. So I can't remember whether the mixing was starting then, I think. And I don't remember that much other production, to be honest, but there must have been a few things. So probably there wasn't that much time between that and Depeche Mode. And then after Depeche Mode, I mean, that was, I think, the Tears for Fears things came pretty soon after that.
Did you ever, I mean, obviously, I know you're a keyboard player, and did you ever get into sort of writing with bands or anything like that? As a producer, I mean.
I suppose I would have done it if I felt it needed it. It never came to the point where...
But you were quite happy to sort of go, I've got an idea.
Oh, absolutely. Well, as a producer, you have to. That's the whole point
yes,
you're there
you do.
for, you know?
I mean,
but
but
that's one of the reasons, if I haven't got an idea, I don't think I should be doing it, you know. But as far as writing a part, I don't think I ever felt the need for it. In fact, I did a name dropping, but I did much later on, I did some mixes with the Manic Street Preachers. James said that I had, apparently said, when I'd heard the rough, whatever it was, the pre-mixes, well, that one needs a guitar solo. I don't know which track it was, but he said, that needs an extra guitar part. And I said to him, bloody hell, that's a bit presumptuous of me, wasn't it? He said, well, I think I'd mentioned it to Rob, the A&R guy, not to the band themselves, you know. And he said, but we went away and did one, and it needed it, and he was dead right. So that was James.
That's great.
He's one of the nicest men on the planet, isn't really, James?
So obviously you did a bit of production with you, and then the Seeds of Love started to happen. Now, one thing I just wanted to ask about this was, I know that it was obviously, there were some false starts and what have you.
Yeah.
And am I right in thinking that they originally started with Clive Lang and Alan Winstead?
Right. Yeah.
Now, were you involved in that?
No.
Okay.
No, I mean, I still sort of socially saw them, but not that much because I was quite busy. I was in London, obviously. But they wanted to change, as they always do, you know. And I think they love Shipbuilding. That's a song that Clive co-wrote with Elvis Costello. So they wanted some. Runner's always looking for songwriting partners, and I think he really wanted that input. But it just didn't work out for whatever reason. I mean, some of those tracks have resurfaced or will resurface. I think they're reissuing Seeds of Love soon.
But I'm right in thinking that they wanted to move away a bit from the ultra
program sort of
modern.
Very much, yeah. Well, basically, Roland hated the touring process with everything on a Revox, all the back, you know, the drum loops and stuff, whatever, that couldn't be recreated. Having to play to a Revox, being stuck with the same running order, same tempos every night, like most people now do. You know, most pop bands.
Revox.
Yeah, and a Revox.
Using a Revox to.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, you know, there was multi-track digital workstations and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So he got totally sick, and then of course, famously, they saw Alita Adams playing in this little bar in Kansas. And it was the opposite of what they were doing, you know. It was someone who was just singing from the heart, and you know, well, it's not, but with nothing there, no technology, just playing the piano, you know, from a completely different world. And that just inspired them to do something completely different. Whether they succeeded, I don't know, really. But,
no, they undoubtedly did. So they started with Clive and Alan, and that didn't work out.
Yeah. Then
were you?
Chris was asked to come back in again, and it's pretty much a repeat. Actually, I seem to remember got a call from someone saying they started with a different engineer as well. Someone, I can't remember who it was, and that hadn't worked out. So they decided, and I think they'd heard actually, Roland and Kurt had heard Danny Wilson and really liked a track called Davy. Anyway, they'd heard that, and I remember Roland thinking, well, Mary's Prayer's all right, but this is really nice. So they thought, you know, obviously I'd moved along a bit, and it would be good to have me back on the team. So I got a call, went up to Roland's house, because I thought they had been working there. No one had told me where to go, because he Roland had a studio there. So I turned up there. And
this is down in Bath?
No, he'd moved to London by now. Well, he had houses in Bath and London, but he bought the big place in London with a studio at the top. And I'd been there, I think, a couple of times. Well, I'd obviously been there a few times. I knew where it was. So I turned up there, and they weren't there. They were at Air. So I trucked on down to Air. So we started doing some live stuff with Chris playing drums. I don't think any of that got used at all. That album was just a lot of fumbling around trying to find.
And at this stage, you were still engineered.
Yes, so I was basically engineering that project. I was brought back as the engineer. So it was kind of trying to get back to a bit of the ethos of Songs for the Big Chair, although everything else around it had changed. Really, the whole direction had changed. And I mean, I don't think Chris will mind me, if he hears this. I don't think he'll mind me saying, but I think everyone had lost the plot, really. I mean, Roland had some sort of the back of his mind that he knew what he wanted, but he didn't really know how to get there. And Chris, there was a lot of, how do you follow up that massive previous album? I think everyone was floundering a little bit.
Well, I think
and
also
Chris
particularly
done an outstanding job on Seasons Love, but I didn't think he really had an idea where we were going with this one, to be honest. So it was a bit rudderless, I thought.
Well, I think it's also quite tricky when you've had such an enormous record and the artist wants to go in a different direction, and you're immediately being thinking, but
well, of course,
but that,
And but actually, I have to redress that in case he does this, because Chris did pretty much the same thing again on Seeds of Love. He said, Roland, you haven't got enough songs here.
Right.
Go away. And Roland came back with Sowing the Seeds of Love and The Woman in Chains,
Wow.
So if nothing else, Chris deserves, just the biggest big up for that. But in terms of, Woman in Chains was a good example. We did so many bloody versions of that. We were down this point, when we did basically a tour every studio in Britain, just for the change. We just go away. A lot of it's done at Roland's house. And then we went to Real World when it's just been opened. Before they built the big room, so we were upstairs in what became Peter's room, and we just sat there for days working on Woman in Chains because it didn't have a middle eight. To me, it was so I didn't. Not that I can't say I was going, it needs a middle eight, but as it subsequently turned out, that's what it needed. So we just had this endless. The middle section went on for days, minutes, and minutes, and so we there's a lot of this, and I just thought this has really lost that focus we had before on the previous album, which was a really disciplined, but everyone pulling in the right direction. This was the opposite, really. So yes. So
by this time, it was just you and the boys, was it? Or?
Well, no. Chris basically got fired off the session. Ian had left. Ian Stanley, who had been involved originally, played this brilliant organ on Sowing. That was the kind of only Sowing the Seeds of Love was almost like the old days because it wasn't a bunch of session guys. It was the band in the studio with Chris on drums,
Kurt playing bass.
Roland playing.
So the drums on that are Chris.
Chris, yeah, he's a genius Ringo Starr impersonator.
Yes, no, yes, and that opening fill, it is.
So Kurt's on bass, Roland's on some of the big DX7 thing, doing like a whirly part. Ian's on the organ, just a band,
and it's great organ.
Absolutely great organ.
Yeah.
Although he won't admit it, he's just the world's. We tried to get him to do another solo because basically, we then spent weeks editing this bloody thing.
So what, you did multiple takes of?
Oh God, yeah. Oh yeah, did we ever? I'll tell you the story behind that. Basically, we didn't want to use a click.
And sorry, where was this being recorded?
This is a townhouse. Townhouse. We moved to townhouse by then.
Mm-hmm.
So we didn't want to do it with a click. So I remember there's a rumour that they used, or Roland seems to think it was I'm the Walrus as the kind of template for the song. I'm convinced it was Cheese and Onions off the Ruttles album. And I remember borrowing the album from John. We had a mutual manager, John Reed, and I think I've never given it back. Anyway, Anyway, who cares? It doesn't really matter. But we did endless takes, obviously trying to stick to a tempo, so that all these takes would intercut.
But
later.
Not using a click.
So then we spent another days with Chris. Chris was responsible for all the edits, and it didn't work. It sounded all right, just listening to the drum track. Playing back, but then they all had to play on top of the drum track, and it just felt terrible. So then we had to, but this time we only had a day left, but only a day. You do an album today, but so we had a day.
And I did recently.
One day to this drum track.
Oh
my god!
Yeah.
But we were programming the tempo changes in on. I can't remember what it was as we went. I know it's on the Lindrum. That's right. So, and I had to keep notes of everything because obviously we were going to intercut them later, so that they basically start the verse at such a tempo, go up in the first chorus, maybe down again a little bit in the second, but lots of tempo changes going on, programmed though. And they would change, so within the first two takes it'd be the same except for the end would go up one more BPM, and they'd all be different variations, so I had to make meticulous notes so I knew what would chop together. Anyway, so it was done on... we did it on. We got the Mitsubishi 32 digital by then.
So you moved over to digital recording?
Well, we had recorded on digital, but we did the edits on analog. We copied it onto analog to do the edits. Old school. Oh, I know. And then we copied it all back onto digital. But anyway, the point of this story, completely 2 hours ago, I mentioned the organ solo. Fuck me, this is going to be the longest podcast
ever. I love it.
Anyway, that organ solo just happened to be the one that was played at the time for the drums. We were only looking for the drums. That's all we were interested in, nothing else. And So that.
But you were all still playing together.
Well,
everyone
played. Yeah, everyone played at the same time.
Right.
So so in case we thought, okay, we got that. So Ian, go and do another take of the organ, will you? No, I'm not interested. So then we offset every other take for that solo spot to see if it was better organ solo, and there wasn't. And then that just happened to be the one that was. I mean, shock horror.
Off the cuff.
Yeah, I mean, these bands that do everything together.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, these musicians who perform.
We really rebelled against our own rules here. We used the organ solo. It just happened. But also, I mean, it was the start of a kind of a bit of free. Although it sounds ludicrous, it was freeing up things a little bit because a lot of the vocal we ended up using was the guide vocal that Roland screamed and shouted at the time. So he said to me, can you distort the mic, get John Lennon-y kind of thing? And I didn't bother plugging in a box or anything. I just screwed the mic gain up.
Yeah,
didn't pay any attention to it really. And that was the vocal that we ended up using a lot of.
Yeah.
And on some of the edits, I actually know if you solo the vocal, it's going. So, because obviously we were focusing on the.
Well, because
but you don't notice that stuff.
But isn't that always the way? Those things that because you're not worried about.
Of course.
You do those performances, don't you?
Well, that's the same with B-side syndrome, isn't it? How many B-sides have turned out because you're not worried about it? So I've always done with everybody, particularly with Tears for Fears, B-sides have been so much fun, so much low pressure.
Yeah.
And some of them are actually much better more than B-sides, but even if not, I still enjoy them for what they are. Well, just going back to what we were talking about writing, I mean, the only thing I've actually written that's got a publishing deal was a B-side with Tears for Fears later on, and there's a weird little track that Roland had, which is just a little riff going around in a weird time signature. And then he'd gone home one night and there was a synth knocking about, and I just started messing around with some chords, and he came in the next day and liked it, and so we expanded on it a bit. And he gave me a co-write, which is lovely, on that track. Fantastic. And it became the next single when Tim had started working with them. Which I've got to say, I thought was, bloody hell, this is odd choice for a single. I mean, it really was. That was a B-side that should have stayed a B-side as well.
Right.
But they rewrote the verses completely.
Yeah.
But that was such a great, and I mentioned this the other day, what I love about our job is and I don't get to see this very often these days, is watching people create. And that was Roland on form, and it's just a joy to watch because the whole lyric and the vocal, and there's a sort of intertwining guitar solo he does that goes in between the gaps and around the vocal. And I remember him just putting it together, and it was, just sitting there watching this process, an absolute treat,
That was a long process doing that album, wasn't it?
It was.
I mean, a couple of years?
2 years, well, yeah, on and off. But mainly on, actually. It was long. I mean, it became like a day job, we'd be working, I don't know, 10 or 11 till 7 or something, and then go out for a nice meal. It was great.
Right.
And it was just an odd time, we were a bit out of time by then. I mean, the world had moved on,
yes.
Of course.
Yes.
And people were making records with Acai's, and we were still using Fairlight 3s. It was a bit dinosaur,
So was it all done with that thought in process in mind? Because I know you got Alita Adams in as well.
She sang.
Who was definitely of that sort of way of doing
things.
Yeah,
well, Badman Song, I think, is one of the examples where it worked best.
Yeah.
She's playing the piano. It's a live, it was session guys, but it's her playing piano live. And brilliant piano playing, and it's not typical Tears for Fears. It's not really of any time. Obviously, everyone says it's a bit like Little Feat, but that wasn't exactly fashionable in 1989. So, but we didn't really care. Well, Rolling Stones didn't care particularly.
And by this point, was it sort of acknowledged that you were kind of co-producing
this
now?
So, yeah,
and you were much involved as a decision making.
Well, yeah. I mean, I wouldn't say really I was dictating things. I mean,
I wouldn't say
if
that.
I was asked, then I'd give an opinion.
Yeah.
But I wasn't going to sort of, and now and again I'd say stuff. But Roland was pretty much locked into his little world of how it's going to go then. So he really couldn't get he didn't really want anybody to try and get in there. I think. I mean, that's part of the reason that I'm making no bones about it. He didn't want to have the battles anymore that you'd have with people pushing you, and of course Chris and Ian Stanley had pushed him into developing Shout and Everybody Wants the World, particularly Chris in that example, with amazing results.
With great results.
But sometimes people just don't. People just.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I mean, one of the questions I was asking you was that thing where success changes. When you get that the game changer, if you like, where something has become fantastically successful, but sometimes it can be, and there can be negatives towards it. But what's nice to hear, I suppose, is that you went back into work with Roland again, and it hadn't really changed. It was
no.
There was in some ways it almost seems like it was better because you stuck it through, didn't you?
Yeah. I was his ally, I think, and I still was his ally in the process.
Yeah.
I mean, the one thing that led on, which was odd, was that the mix of that, because Dave Bates, the A&R guy, was insistent that someone else should mix it, even before I'd had a chance, which I was pretty pissed off about, but it's obviously now happens all the time. We were all used to it. So he wanted to get Bill pricing. And
well, that's an interesting choice.
It is.
I mean, Bill was fantastic,
absolutely.
but I can't imagine him doing
this is
that.
the whole thing, but it was flavour of the month. I mean, Dave Bates, bless him, he had his flavours of the month. And obviously Bill had done something for him. Now, we didn't really know, we knew who he was, but it wasn't relevant to us at all. And we really weren't keen. And we didn't give him a very easy time of it, particularly Roland, I think it's fair to say. But it was just, I offered to sort of plug the desk up for him, because we're talking about 64 tracks of fucking everything, 12 things on the same track. And I thought, he's never going to find his way around this. And he wasn't interested. So I came back in the mix, and he'd have like one fader. He hadn't cross-patched it. So the one fader would have like lead vocal, middle eight, tambourine, it's like 5 things on there. I'm thinking, how are you coping with this? You couldn't, unless you manually change in the EQ.
Yeah.
And some aspects to it were great. I mean, he had a great bottom end. It sounded really nice. But Roland just wasn't there. Roland just wasn't interested in the slightest, and basically dismissed it completely. And then we said, right, if anybody's going to do it, let's get Bob Clearmountain, because at least we know him. Roland done something with him before. And so
and a safe pair of hands.
Oh, absolutely. So he came in with his rack, and he did Sowing the Seeds of Love, first of all, and it was completely wrong. And Bob, bless him, I want to mention this because for quite a few years after this, he mentioned this in interviews, and he's such a modest bloke. I mean, he's done, as we all know, billions of fantastic sounding records.
Oh, he's amazing.
But this is the one he often mentions, the one that got away, which is Sowing the Seeds of Love.
Yeah.
So Roland walked in and just said, no, it's completely wrong. So poor Bob was like, this is pretty freaky for him. He said, well, okay, tell me what you want. No, this is completely wrong. Scrap it.
You obviously heard it. What was?
Yeah, I can't remember now. I just thought this isn't right. I can't remember how.
Yeah.
But it just wasn't Beatley, basically.
Okay.
I think it probably sounded a bit American rock or something.
Yeah.
So that was pretty gutting for him. And then he went next one he did was Woman in Chains, which is just a masterpiece. Although we always said I hadn't mixed it at all, and I always wanted to go, because there's always things about the monitor mix you like, isn't it? And I thought, but I mean, listening now, I could never top that. It's a wonderful mix. And then he did half of Year of the Knife, which is only interesting. This is only interesting if you're interested.
It's half for him and half you, isn't it?
Yeah, it's if you're interested. It was just because literally this happened at the cut. I mean, this is kind of typical, describing the whole process of the album. We're at mastering session in New York, and we still hadn't decided about some of the mixes, and the running order. So the roadie was flying out from Britain with DAT tapes of, I'd meticulously put it on 1.5 inch, but no, we put DAT tape of different mixes.
Yeah.
And we was there, and we couldn't decide which version to use. So we had this earlier version of Year of the Knife, which Clearmountain had done with programmed drums, Fairlight drums, and then we'd gone on and done endless different versions of it, including getting Simon Phillipson to do real drums on it. And I'd done a mix, and me and Kurt preferred my mix, and Dave Bates and Roland preferred the Clearmountain's one. And I thought, whatever, I don't care, I don't want to make a fuss. So Roland said, okay, we're going to use the Clearmountain one, but there's a section I want you to edit in off your version, which is just towards the end, where there's some sound effects, wind and rain and stuff going on. So they left me to it, and I queued it up, and I did the edit, which is you previewed on the 1630. You remember?
No, and do I ever?
So and I left it running. I thought, this is great. And I said, what do you think? They came back and said, yeah, it's brilliant. So that was it, basically. So it goes, by just chance and luck, it goes from a program version, which is very American rock, which is why they went for Bob, yeah. And then it kind of goes into more ways, real drums, and it's all kind of tambour, if you like, but you get the excitement coming in on the end section. Yeah. Now, punters no one is ever going to know that, but for me, it's a little kind of Strawberry Fields moment,
Yeah, I was going to say, it's a Strawberry Fields moment.
So I know exactly where the edit is, and I put it in a very sort of muso, wanky place. It's like on a hi-hat, not a snare.
Yeah, that's cool.
But yeah, it worked out fantastically. I was like, after spent 2 years on this track, whatever it was, which was, I never liked that song. It was always a problematic song.
Yeah. I should tell you that at the time you were mixing that record, I was also working for Dave Bates with Tim Palmer, and I was engineering an album for The Mission.
Oh, The Mission. Right. Tim talks about it, yeah.
And we were, I remember we were in at Swan Yard, I'm pretty certain it was Swan Yard Studios, I think we were mixing. And, the door gets booted open, and he comes Bates. And everyone's like, oh, Jesus, everyone's in trouble, It always felt like that, didn't it? Yeah. What's this fucking rubbish? We're all in trouble immediately. And he's like, listen to it, goes, yeah, great. Anyway, listen to this. This is proper. And he stuck on Zone and Seeds to Love. And I swear to God, I remember listening to it going, another fucking, you, man, bane of my life.
Right. Every time you want some tips, Chris, I'm still here for you.
Thanks, man. Honestly, it was just sort of...
But you know what?
It was fantastic.
I've said this before, but I'm sure, but that was like a Wednesday overnight mix. And
really?
Sometimes I see it on outtakes on Spotify or something. It's called WED OV. People don't know what it means, but it's just Wednesday overnight.
Yeah.
And we did some more stuff on the next day, and then we preferred it as it was. So it was a one day mix.
Yeah. But that happened.
No, but the thing was, I thought it was shite. I was
really?
so lost the plot. Yeah. And everything else was shiny Fairlight and all kind of very programmed and neat and tidy bottom end. Yeah. This was kind of rumbly and, now it sounds ridiculously hi-fi and posh. Then I just thought this is all over the place, sonically. But I spent weeks trying to remix that. And Roland was just like, let me get on with it. We must have wasted thousands. I mean, but Kurt very nicely on an interview said that it was Dave Bates who wanted it better, which maybe there's a bit of that as well. Well, let's see if we can get it better. But no, I take the blame for.
Well, though, Dave. I mean, I've mixed a few things myself, and I had exactly the same feeling when I did the Foo Fighters record mixing for Gil.
Right. Okay.
And we finished the record as I was mixing it in LA, and I got it home, and I listened to it, and I thought, I've really fucked this up.
Oh, that's horrible, that feeling.
I thought, this just sounds fucking awful.
Really?
Because...
Well, you were right.
And I was right, yeah. No, I don't. No, but it is that thing where, you just are so excited and you want it to be, and it can be brilliant. Yeah, and I'd done what I think I thought was right on it, and everyone was happy.
Yeah.
But I put it on at home and just thought, this is the biggest pile of shit I've ever fucking heard. This is awful. And it is that thing, isn't it? Then slowly you're like, oh...
Yeah. Well, it's time away, isn't it? Time away from it. And then it becomes... That's the version. It's the accepted version. I just got to say that House of Love stuff you did with Tim. I loved it.
Did you?
It still sound... Oh, man.
I haven't listened to it for years.
I don't actually listen to that much, but it pops on occasion. I still think it's just... I mean, for me, that's the sound of the 80s as well. You and Tim. But it was big and reverby, but it's still really... The drum sound was great.
Yeah, that was... I
did a mix with them later on. Did I tell you the Beatles and the Stones?
That was a great track.
Yeah, it was a great track.
That was a great track, yeah. So, obviously, Tears for Fears comes out. After that, one of the first times we met was you were mixing a band for EMI. And Dreaming, maybe? Was that what they were called?
Oh, The Dreaming. Yeah.
Yeah, and I'd just not long been with
Reedy. You did a recording with that.
I did a bit of recording with you. I came down to the townhouse and sort of got in the way a bit, basically.
To be honest, that was when I realised that I shouldn't be producing, because I just lost the plot on it, really. I think, to be fair to me, 2 years of doing Tears for Fears really messed my head up in terms of...
Did you have any time off after, or did you...
I probably had a little bit, but not enough to get my head... No, I didn't work on anything that was going to clear my head artistically and sonically. It was just... I think everything was in my head needed to be as complex as Seeds of Love and as huge and anthemic. And of course, I think I tried to shoehorn that onto the most inappropriate track, really. It's the only way I could describe it. Mm. And no, it didn't work out. I mean... and they were actually really good.
They were a good band. I remember it being coming down, and it was, and you were having firing loops, and trying to get loops in time and stuff like that. And it was pretty complex. I remember.
Probably.
Well, I was only there for like 3 or 4 days. I think you just needed an extra pair of hands.
I think it even got even more complex. I remember you did drums at Abbey Road. I can't remember who the drummer was, but you engineered that.
Oh, did I?
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. Abbey Road 3. Yeah.
But then after that, did you start to find yourself slipping more towards mixing?
Definitely. Well, if you get all those offers coming in to mix, I mean, you can do whatever, 5, 6 albums, whatever it is, in the space of producing it. You can mix 5 albums, whatever it is, in the space of producing. And also, you're obviously getting a lot of demands to do single mixes. So you get a very busy schedule. Mm. And I don't know what comes first, whether it's realising I'm better at mixing than I'm producing, because you don't have to have that vision, really. Mm. I mean, you can work on a lot of things that you're not necessarily totally in love with. But you really need to be in love with a project to produce it. Mm. And so I'd find from working in studios, even from the earliest days, it's expanded my tastes so much. I came in quite blinkered. And working on all sorts of projects really expands your your taste. So I could work on a track that I didn't particularly like, didn't like the artist necessarily. And if I came away thinking, actually, I quite like this now because of what I've done, that's probably a good sign, and I find that very satisfying. So there's that aspect to it, and then it just comes to the question of produce an album or whatever, a single or something. You've got to turn down a lot of other work, and that's quite tricky. And politically, it's obviously a lot simpler. You're only dealing with maybe.
Well, as you say, you don't have to be emotionally involved.
Exactly, that's the big difference.
Yeah,
and I miss that a lot. I mean, but not so much these days. But I certainly have missed it. I mean, starting out with a blank reel of tape, as it used to be, was always a great moment. Getting to know the band and being part of their little world, and and this could go anywhere. Let's see what happens. I used to really enjoy aspects of that, but I'd have to have some sort of idea of where it was going to go. And sometimes just bluffing it or seeing where it goes, I find I'm thinking about it more and more now, actually, because I sort of put myself down a bit for it. But I think Tears for Fears process really did screw my direct sense of direction up. And any kind of direct vision became, we tried everything possible on that album. We just explored every avenue. We'd fly John Hassel over just to do some trumpet, So everything was on the table, and it was undisciplined completely. And so I was full of that concept. And I think, right, I'm going to try some African nose flutes on this pop record. Okay, it could have been brilliant, but it wasn't.
Yeah.
So everything, I just thought, I just lost direction. I lost focus.
Do you think, in hindsight, what you should have done is do something radically different?
Yeah.
But go and produce a 4-piece rock and roll band.
Yeah. But I wouldn't have known how to probably by then.
Yeah.
That's the trouble, because I would have put an orchestra on it and
Yeah.
African nose flute.
I'm going to put those fucking nose
that
flutes.
song, it's a bit short of 3 minutes. I think we should make it to 30. Not through the middle. No, you're absolutely right. I needed a big. But you see, there were some times actually, and that's probably. I kind of felt like to be going back to being a tape op for a bit.
Yes. I was talking to somebody just the other day, sort of about this, and saying there were times when you're in the middle of a session and there's loads going on, and particularly if you're producing it, you've got the record company expectations, you've got the band expectations, and there are times and you'd look at the assistant coming and going, "Anyone want a cup of tea?" And you go, "Oh, I fucking do your job in a heartbeat, mate."
Well, I call it a white van man moment.
Yeah.
Because with times we're really stressed when you're driving into work and you see a bloke in a white van, and you go, "Oh God, I'd love to do that."
Yeah.
He's going to knock off at 5 o'clock.
Yeah.
Go and have a pint. Get his tea.
And he's fine. He's done his delivery.
No, exactly. But I think also with production, it was becoming more and more. You weren't being left to your own devices. I mean, we really in the 80s we were left to it. I mean, particularly there was a couple of mentions that mix of House of Love I mentioned, and I remember Sit Down as well by James, which I mixed.
Yeah, great.
The record company never heard it. I think Dave Bates called up when I was doing the House of Love and said, "How's it going?" I said, "Well, I finished it. I'm going home." And he was like, "I haven't heard it." That's fine. That's whatever.
Trust me, it's all right.
Yeah, so trust me, it's all right. And the same with Sit Down. I mean, I guys rang up and we were on the way out or something, and luckily it worked out. It didn't always, but so that was. But obviously, those days were coming. Well, not so much the mixing, but producing. You were left alone as well. Really, for better or worse, a lot. And that was changing. You were getting more day-to-day interference, I suppose.
Well, I suppose also there was, as things progressed as well, there was less money coming in.
Yeah,
people started. I mean, in those days of the songs from the Big Chair.
Yeah.
There was no download.
No,
there was nothing. So
Chris had it in his contract that he wouldn't have to deal with a budget at all.
Right, but if a record was even vaguely successful, even if your record sold 50,000 copies back then, it was still generating a considerable amount of money.
Yeah.
Because CDs were 15 quid each.
Yeah.
I mean, what the fuck?
That's amazing.
And you imagine that times a few million. I mean, there is some serious dough coming.
It was just.
And that started to change.
Yeah.
It really did. I mean, there were a few things that you did which I didn't know, which was like Suede. I didn't know the Beautiful Ones.
Yeah,
I mean, that's an incredible mix.
Yeah,
I love that.
Yeah, I'm really pleased with that album. I think they're a fantastic band, and that and Erasure, funny enough, are the ones where I think I was lucky enough to be there at one of their peaks. So maybe it's not.
What did you do with Erasure?
I mixed chorus.
Did you?
Which is a brilliant. I'm not talking about my input. I'm just talking about the songs.
Yeah.
And I think the songs with Sway, they're fantastic songs.
Yeah.
And Ed Bullard did a brilliant.
That was still Ed was producing that, wasn't he? Then?
Yeah. And he was very involved in the mix. I mean, a lot of the mixes down is him.
Well,
as well.
he speaks very highly. I mean, I'm just doing a bit of research on
on the web, and he said that a great part of that album is you.
Oh,
as far as the sonic
Funny enough,
excellence.
I mixed some stuff that he'd done many years later, and some of my samples still on there. But he must have nicked off the multi-tracks at the time, which is fine.
So mixing wise, yeah, you did Suede, there's Mannix, you did, and Goldfrapp.
Yeah.
What did you do with Goldfrapp?
So a few things earlier on. So I did some stuff on the first album, which was Felt Mountain, I think. Really can't remember that much about the titles, and I think some of them might have been single remixes.
Yeah.
The album had been done, and then I knew Will because obviously Will was sax player in Tears for Fears live.
Cool.
He played on Working Hour, you know,
Cool.
and well, not just live, but he played on all the solo stuff on Working Hour.
Yeah.
I mean, what a genius!
He's
another just great bloke.
Is he?
Love him to death. Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, and one of those ones I knew he was great as a musician, but no idea that you don't. Well, I had no inkling that he would go on and do something like that.
Oh, the stuff's incredible. I love
It's
Goldfrapp.
amazing.
I mean, it's so
amazing.
good. The programming and the sounds and
Yeah.
everything. I mean, put the records on, and honestly, I think they sound amazing.
They do.
They
Absolutely.
just immediate.
Yeah.
You know, I don't know what
So
he
I
does.
did it's like a bit like the Placebo. I sort of did very early stuff with them.
You did Nancy Boy?
Yeah.
Amazing.
That's great, isn't it? I love.
Oh,
what
it's
a great
amazing.
track. Well,
Did you do Teenage Angst?
No.
Did Nancy Boy?
Yeah.
Well, I remember those were the two sort of earlyish singles.
Right, I don't
but-
remember Teenage Angst.
Oh, it's a great tune. But Nancy Boy, I remember that was.
lovely
It
when
just
bands
suddenly sounded incredible.
Lovely when bands, it's that raw, isn't it? You know,
Oh,
I think they're a
amazing.
brilliant band, but
Yeah.
they've obviously got much more polished over the years.
Yes.
And, so I've done various things with them and Goldfrapp over the years, and I get called back.
And when did you decide to get your own place together? Was it?
Well, I was at Townhouse, as I said,
Yeah,
and then I got a room at Metropolis and started doing loads of stuff in there, and then they chucked me out of there because they wanted to redevelop with the room next door through. So ended up at Sphere, where I had what was Chris Kimsey's old room. Did you ever come down there?
Yeah, I do work there once. Yeah.
Right. And that was actually great, actually. It worked out really, really well. Because they basically had 3 studios there as well. So I could easily nip in to one of the SSL studios if I need to do something in there. I did a Chromie album on the SSL there. That's the last time I worked on a big desk. And then I could pop into my room if I wanted anything. It was a really nice situation. And I love being around people, So anyway, when that finally closed, I was pretty devastated. I spent a lot of time trying to find somewhere else because I really do like going out to work, and I like just even if you're only a receptionist, just talking to other people, and so it was just good generally. But anyway, that shut, and I spent a lot of time trying to find something equivalent, and just didn't. And so my wife had suggested that I build this. I'd seen your place, and thought that looks really nice. Literally, they finished the wiring in here on the day I had to move out of Sphere, so it worked out perfectly.
Yeah.
And now I still miss it, but when I've got the age I'm at, I'm sort of semi-retired, so it's fine.
Do you feel like you are?
Yeah, really, yeah. I mean, I get enough work to keep me happy when it's there, and I'm quite happy when it's not. I've got a little project I'm doing with a friend of mine. But I do get asked, I don't know about you, but I quite often get things that I think, well, what's wrong with this?
Oh, mate, all the time.
And I don't think I've ever actually done it, because you can't, it's our job, But sometimes I'll say, look, I really don't know what you expect to do, because this is very occasionally I'll say this, I really don't know what to do with it. And sometimes you'll actually fess up to it and say, look, are you sure? And usually always people say, well, just do what you do. And I've got no idea what that is, but usually it works out and people like it, So sometimes I'll drive myself crazy listening to their mix, thinking, I've lost it here, but usually I do what I do, and people listen.
Whatever it is you do, Dave, it is great, man.
Yes.
It is brilliant.
Thanks,
and
mate.
what an absolute pleasure to talk to you.
Well, it's been a real pleasure. It's been a real pain in the arse, Chris. I never want to talk to you again. No, we are old mates, and it's been fantastic. Really, really enjoyable.
Brilliant.
Dave Bascombe there. Really hope you enjoyed listening to that. Remember, you can hear all our other episodes with Flood, Gil Norton, Maximo Park, Douglas Dare, Sophie Hunger, Stephen Street, Field Music, This Is the Kit, Dave Erringer and Tim Palmer on your usual podcast platforms right now, so please don't forget to subscribe and leave us a review if you get a second. We're going to leave you with a short burst of chat just as Chris was pretty much on his way out the door when Dave told Chris about a slightly unusual approach to remixing one of the Cranberries' biggest hits, Linger. See you next time.
Steve mentioned me in his one, and he said, it went off to Dave Bascombe.
That's right, he did. Yes, he
And
did.
the thing was, I've got to mention this because he's so right. I mean, what was wrong with his mix?
Yeah.
He went on to be a huge hit, you know.
Yeah.
But I can sort of understand why record labels do it, because obviously let's have a shot, see, you know, if this other guy comes up with something better.
Yeah.
But the stupid story, this is so ridiculous. Before I got asked it, we were doing it at a weekend.
What was the song?
Linger. It's actually Linger.
Right.
And we were doing it at the weekend, and the A&R guy wasn't available, wasn't around, he'd gone away. And I got a call from Noel, I think it was, from the band. I'm not going to do the accent, but he said, it's a few days before, he said, can we keep the strings? I thought, what? What on earth are you talking about? I'm remixing, you know. I said, of course I'll keep the strings, it's on the tape, you know. I was like, yeah. So it became obvious because I turned up at the studio and the roadie was setting the band's gear up in the studio. I mean, I think it's a lovely story because I'm not knocking them because they were just so naive, they're so young. They didn't really know what a remix was, or either that, or maybe they thought, fuck it, we don't like that version, we want another go at doing it, and no one's going to be around to stop us. So basically they wanted to re-record the whole thing. Now thinking back, obviously I should have said, no, that's not what we're doing here, you know. But the record guy wasn't around, it's really his job, you know, to spell out what was happening here. And I thought, well, maybe this has been a discussion. But anyway, I just thought, I think at the bottom of my head, they were nice kids, and I thought, let's see what happens.
Wow.
I know, it's, you know, thinking now, I've really blown my fucking chance, all the royalties I could have had off that record. Anyway, so I let it happen.
So you recorded it?
I re-recorded, well, I tried re-recording it, and we did, and obviously we kept the strings because we were overdubbing to a copy of the tape. But, and Dolores, you know, maybe it's just because she wanted to redo her vocal, and that was might have been the impetus behind it.
Yeah.
A&R guy turns up about 6 o'clock on Sunday night, says, no, it's crap, I don't like it at all. So I thought, oh fuck, okay, because I got carried away with the process like you do, and this is why I'm not a producer probably. I should have said, whoa, hang on a minute.
So you hadn't remixed Stephen's version?
I did. No, I did end up remixing. I think. Well, I've still got a few hours here.
Yeah.
Fuck it, I'll get Stephen's version up and remix. And we ended up using Dolores' new vocal. And listen to these things emerge, unfortunately, now on greatest hits and stuff. And I listened to it the other day. My version is now out there.
Wow.
And bless her, Dolores' vocal is really not great at all. And the mix isn't great because I only spent a few hours on it. And there was nothing wrong with Stephen's anyway. You know? So. Anyway, our mix wasn't as good as his.
No. Yeah. Well, sometimes it just doesn't happen.
No,
I mean, you know, and there's, as you quite rightly say, sometimes it's an experiment.
Yeah.
And, you know, you might get something out of it.
Just in terms of, everyone gets it wrong, I mean, I've done the Bob thing, but I'm not going to mention who this was, but I was doing some tracks on a Golf Rap album, and Wills came in and said, look, I've got this version that says, it's really not right, what do you think's wrong with it? And he said, is it too compressed? And I said, no, the drums are fucking far too loud. And I was sort of, he went, okay, thanks, and went back and thought, hang on, why don't you ask me to mix it?
Yeah.
Just asking me to tell you what's wrong with the other guy's mix. You know?
Yeah.
But I mean, I say this guy's a really huge mixer, and everyone gets it wrong every now and again. You know? So,
Well, you do. You can't. You can't. You know, win every time,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
We win enough times to keep employed.